Young Rose's husband, Mark, comes home from work to find her grinning from ear to ear. "You seem happy, love," he says. "Did you get some good news?" Rose beams. "Not just good news, great news." Mark raises an eyebrow. "So tell me." "I'm pregnant," she announces. Mark smiles. "Wow, that is great news." Rose says, but the really great news is, it's twins." Mark stares, confused. "Twins? How do you know that already?" Rose nods confidently and says, "Well, I bought one of those twin-pack pregnancy tests, and both came back positive." A young woman rushed into the pediatrician's office, looking worried. "Doctor, my nephew hasn't been drinking milk for 2 days," she said. The doctor nodded, rolled up his sleeves, and gently pressed her chest in a few places. After a moment, he shook his head and said, "Well, ma'am, there's no milk here at all." She stepped back, wide-eyed. "Doctor, I'm his aunt." The officer asked, "Sir, where are you going at this hour?" The man replied, "I'm on my way to a lecture." The officer raised an eyebrow. "A lecture? At 2 a.m.? What kind of lecture?" The man said, "It's about alcohol abuse, smoking, staying out late, and the effects it all has on the human body." The officer, now confused, asked, "Really? Who's giving a lecture like that in the middle of the night?" The man sighed and said, "My wife." Dad was out of town. Little Johnny woke up to a weird buzzing noise. Boo, boo, boo. He rubbed his eyes, followed the sound to Mom's room, peeked in and asked, "Mom, is there a fly in here?" She gasped, "Yes! Yes! Yes!" I was in a restaurant last night and was unhappy with my meal, so I called the waiter over and said, "Waiter, my soup is cold." The waiter replied, "It's gazpacho." So I said, "Gazpacho, my soup is cold." A little boy runs to greet his maternal grandmother at the door. With a big smile, he says, "Oh, Grandma, I'm so glad you're here." She smiles warmly and asks, "Well, thank you, sweetie. Why's that?" The boy grins and replies, "Because now Daddy's going to do that trick he promised us." "Trick?" Grandma says, puzzled. "What trick?" The boy answers cheerfully, "He told Mommy that if you came to visit, he'd climb the walls." Two elderly ladies had been the best of friends for decades. They'd shared laughs, secrets, and even some mischief. Now they mostly just played cards together a few times a week. One afternoon, mid-game, one of them pauses and says sheepishly, "Now don't get mad at me. I know we've been friends a long time, but for the life of me, I just can't remember your name. I've been racking my brain. Please, just tell me what your name is." The other lady stares at her. Stares. For a good 3 minutes. No words, just a slow, unblinking glare. Finally, she says, "How soon do you need to know?" A scrawny little guy walks into a lumber camp looking for a job. The boss looks him up and down and says, "Get out of here. Our axes weigh more than you do." The little guy pleads, "Just give me a chance. Let me prove myself." The boss rolls his eyes but points to a small, 1-foot-thick tree. "Fine, chop that one down." The guy grabs an axe, takes 2 swings. "Timber!" The tree drops. Impressed, the boss points to a massive 5-foot diameter tree. "Okay, now try that one." 10 swings later, boom, it falls too. Stunned, the boss says, "That's incredible. Where'd you learn to chop like that?" The little guy replies casually, "The Sahara Forest." The boss squints. "Don't you mean the Sahara Desert?" The guy shrugs. "Sure, it is now." It is. 2 babies were chilling in their cribs when one leaned over and whispered, "Hey, do you know if you're a boy or a girl?" The other baby shrugged, giggling. "I'm not really sure. How do you even tell?" The first baby grinned. "No worries. I'll investigate." He crawled out of his crib and into the other one like a little detective on a mission. A few moments passed under the blanket. Then he popped up, grinning ear to ear. "I figured it out," he announced proudly. "You're a girl, and I'm a boy." The second baby blinked. "Wait, how do you know?" He pointed confidently. "You're wearing pink socks. I've got blue ones." One afternoon in the Arctic, a father polar bear and his son were sitting quietly in the snow. The little polar bear shivered, looked up at his dad, and asked, "Dad, are you sure I'm 100% polar bear?" The father looked surprised. "Of course you are, son. Your mom and I are both polar bears. Why do you ask?" The little bear hugged himself and said through chattering teeth, "Because I'm so cold!" At my vasectomy consultation, the doctor said, "Now this is a big, beautiful man." Then he pulled his pants back up and told me to get undressed. Want to? Archie and Jock are sitting in the pub, chatting about Jock's upcoming wedding. "Ach, it's all going grand," says Jock. "I've got everything sorted. The flowers, the church, the cars, the reception, the rings, the minister, even my stag night." Archie nods in approval. "Sounds like you've thought of everything." "Aye," Jock continues, "I've even bought a kilt to get married in." "A kilt? That's brilliant," says Archie. "You'll look pure smart in that. So, what's the tartan?" Jock pauses, then says with a shrug, "Oh, I imagine she'll be in white." At a golf club, a group of men were in the locker room when a phone on a bench started ringing. One man answered on speaker, and everyone else quietly listened. Man: "Hello?" Voice on phone: "Hi, I just saw a beautiful leather jacket for $2,000. Should I get it?" Man: "If you love it, sure." Voice: "Also, I passed by the car dealership and found a new model I really like. It's $90,000. Man: "Go for it. Just make sure it has all the upgrades." Voice: "One more thing. That house we looked at last year? It's back on the market for $980,000. Man: "Make an offer for $900,000. If they don't take it, we'll go the full price." Voice: "You're amazing. Love you." Man: "Love you too." He hangs up. The entire room is frozen in silence, staring at him in shock. He calmly turns to them and says, "Does anyone know whose phone this is?" An elderly woman was patiently waiting for a parking spot when, out of nowhere, a young man in a shiny red Mercedes zipped in and took it right in front of her. She walked up to him calmly and said, "Excuse me, I was about to park there." The young man smirked and replied, "That's what happens when you're young and quick." The woman didn't say a word. She just got back into her car, reversed a little, and then, without hesitation, drove straight into the side of his brand-new Mercedes. Shocked, the young man shouted, "What are you doing?" The lady stepped out, smiled sweetly, and said, "That's what happens when you're old and don't care anymore." A sad man walks into a bar. The bartender sees the look on his face and asks, "Rough day? What's going on?" The man sighs and says, "My life is miserable. Every night I play chess with my wife, and every night she beats me." The bartender blinks. "Well, why don't you just stop playing chess?" The man shakes his head. "I can't. I love the game. I'm a genius. I never lose." The bartender looks confused. "But you just said your wife beats you every night." The man shrugs. "Yeah, well, she doesn't like to lose." Patrick, visiting from Ireland, was spending his holiday on Bondi Beach, but no matter what he tried, he couldn't seem to catch the attention of any women. Frustrated, he went to a local lifeguard and asked for advice. "Mate," said the lifeguard, "it's obvious. You're wearing those old baggy swim trunks. They make you look like someone's lost uncle. If you want to turn heads, you need to grab a pair of Speedos, 2 sizes too small, and drop a fist-sized potato down the front. I'm telling you, mate, You'll have the ladies all over you. So the next weekend, Patrick showed up at the beach in his new Speedos, 2 sizes too tight, and sure enough, he had a fist-sized potato shoved down there. But as he walked by, everyone on the beach recoiled in horror. People turned away, kids screamed, a seagull fainted. It was chaos. Patrick ran back to the lifeguard in a panic and asked, "What went wrong this time?" The lifeguard took one look and shouted, "Jesus, mate! The potato goes in the front!" Lisa couldn't believe her eyes when she walked through the door after work. The kids were freshly bathed, dinner was simmering on the stove, the table was set, and she even heard the washer and dryer running. It looked like a commercial for the perfect family night. Her husband, Dave, usually more of a "that's not my job" kind of guy, was wiping down the kitchen counters like a pro. Suspicious, Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Okay, what's going on?" Turns out Dave had read an article that said women who work full-time and still do all the housework are often too exhausted for anything romantic at night. So Dave, thinking he was solving his problem, took over the chores for once. The evening was smooth, stress-free, and honestly kind of magical. The next day, Lisa told her friends at the office all about it. "He cooked, cleaned, helped the kids with their homework, even folded the laundry. It was like living in a dream." One of them grinned and asked, "Sounds amazing. And how was the rest of the night?" Lisa smiled, shrugged, and said, "Oh, that? He was too tired." A distinguished Englishman, a longtime member of a prestigious London gentlemen's club, was asked to give a lecture to the members. "Splendid," he said. "What should I talk about?" His friend leaned in and whispered, "Talk about love, old chap. It always keeps the room awake." So that night, the gentleman delivered a 2-hour talk on the subject, witty, detailed, and wildly entertaining. The members applauded him like he'd just won Wimbledon. Later at home, his curious wife asked, "So what did you lecture about at the club tonight, darling?" Not wanting to confess he'd just discussed bedroom antics in vivid detail, he replied smoothly, "Ah, sailing, my dear. Gave a little talk on sailing." She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. A few days later, while shopping in town, she bumped into one of her husband's clubmates. He smiled warmly and said, "Your husband gave an absolutely fascinating talk the other night. Quite the expert, I must say." The wife blinked. "Really? That's odd. He's only done it twice. And the first time he got seasick, and the second time his hat flew off in the wind." An old man and a 20-year-old get paired up at a charity golf tournament. They're standing on the tee of a long par 5 that doglegs sharply around a patch of tall, thick trees. The young guy lines up his shot carefully, aiming to play it safe down the fairway. The old man chuckles and says, "Back in my day, we used to just hit over the trees." The 20-year-old, feeling a little challenged, shrugs and says, "All right, then." He readjusts, takes a big swing. Thwack! Ball goes up, and straight into the trees. Lost. Frustrated but determined, he tees up another, gives it everything he's got. Same result. Gone into the foliage. The old man nods thoughtfully and says, "Of course. When I was your age, the trees were only 6 feet tall." My 15-year-old man-child, who's now bigger than me, Lord help us, to Walmart. Loaded up nearly $200 worth of groceries. Get to checkout and suddenly realize, I ain't got my wallet. No debit card, no credit card, just vibes and a driver's license. Why? Because I changed purses this morning and forgot to transfer everything. So I do what any responsible adult would do. I leave my poor child, no phone, no clue, standing there like a sad security guard, babysitting a buggy full of frozen pizzas and juice boxes, while I fly to the bank for cash. Now the bank was not prepared for me. I rush in, flustered, looking like I just escaped a tornado. The tellers eye me like I'm about to rob the place. One calls the manager. The manager calls the Holy Spirit. Suddenly, I'm in a full-blown identity clearance operation. They're sending codes to my phone, making me log into the app, asking every security question known to mankind. Then she hits me with, "What's the exact balance in your account?" Ma'am. I barely remember why I walked into the kitchen, let alone the last 3 digits of my checking account. I was bracing for a polygraph and a DNA swab. All I needed was $20 and a prayer. Meanwhile, my son's still at Walmart, probably traumatized and forming deep emotional bonds with a shopping cart full of waffles and cheese sticks. A little old lady answered a knock at the door one morning and found a sharply dressed young man standing there with a big grin and a shiny vacuum cleaner. "Good morning, ma'am," he said cheerfully. "If I could just have a couple of minutes of your time, I'd love to show you the latest in high-powered vacuum technology." The old lady narrowed her eyes. "Go away. I haven't got any money." She started to close the door, but before she could, the salesman wedged his foot in the doorway and pushed it open. "Just give me a chance to demonstrate," he insisted. Then, without warning, he dumped a whole bucket of horse manure right onto her hallway carpet. "If this vacuum doesn't suck up every last trace of that mess," he said proudly, "I will personally eat what's left." The old lady calmly took a step back and said, "Well, I hope you're hungry, because they cut off my electricity this morning." A husband had just finished reading a macho self-help book titled How to Be the Man of the House. Feeling bold, he stormed into the kitchen, looked his wife dead in the eye, and declared, "From now on, you need to understand that I am the man of this house, and my word is law. Tonight, you'll cook me a gourmet meal. After dinner, you'll serve me a decadent dessert. Then we're going upstairs, and we're going to have the kind of love I want. After that, you'll draw me a hot bath, wash my back, towel me dry, bring me my robe, and massage my feet and hands. And tomorrow morning, guess who's going to dress me and comb my hair?" Without even looking up from her coffee, his wife replied, "The funeral director would be my first guess." I spent $3,800 on a purebred breeding goat. Top of the line, registered, fancy beard, the whole deal. Turned him loose with my herd of does. And he just stood there. Sniffed the grass, nibbled a fence post, did some weird goat yoga, didn't even glance at the ladies. At that point, I figured I'd accidentally bought a monk with hooves. So I called the vet. He checked him out and said, "Healthy as can be, maybe just a little bashful." Then handed me some little pellets. "Give him one a day," he said. "Should help." Well, by day 2, that goat turned into a 4-legged Casanova. He was chasing every doe in sight, jumped a fence and started sneaking into the neighbor's pasture like it was speed dating night. And the weirdest part? Those pellets smelled like peppermint. I accidentally licked one. Now I'm a little worried I might climb a tree or try to romance a lawnmower. A woman from Chicago was driving alone through the Arizona desert when suddenly her car broke down. No cell service, no traffic, just heat, sand, and silence. Panic began to set in, until out of nowhere, a Native American man appeared on horseback. "Need a ride into town?" he asked. Grateful, she climbed up behind him, and they started riding through the desert. It was quiet. Peaceful, even, except for one strange thing. Every few minutes, the man would let out a loud, "Yee-haw!" His voice echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. She stayed silent, confused but thankful, figuring maybe it was a cultural thing. Eventually, they reached town. The man let out one last joyful shout, tipped his head, and rode off. She made her way to a mechanic and explained what had happened. The mechanic asked, "You all right, ma'am?" "Yes, I'm fine," she replied. But there was something odd. The man kept yelling, "Yee-haw!" during the whole ride. Do you know why? The mechanic paused, then smirked. "Well, let me ask you, what were you holding on to?" She said, Just the horn on the saddle, so I wouldn't fall off." He burst out laughing. "Lady, he wasn't using a saddle." A hard-working man was fed up. "Why am I the one out at work all day while my wife gets to stay home?" he grumbled. "She has it easy. I'd trade places in a heartbeat." That night he looked up and prayed, "Dear God, please let my wife see what I go through, and let me live her life for just one day. I need her to understand how hard I work." To his surprise, God answered, "Wish granted." The next morning the man woke up and found himself in his wife's body. "All right," he thought, "how hard can this be?" He got up and began her daily routine, made breakfast, laid out clothes, got the kids ready and off to school, picked up the dry cleaning, stopped by the bank, bought groceries, came home, put it all away, paid the bills, cleaned the litter box, bathed the dog. And that was just the morning. By the afternoon, he was making beds, sweeping, vacuuming, mopping, doing laundry, picking up the kids and breaking up arguments in the back seat, helping with homework, serving snacks, ironing while half-watching cartoons. At 4:30, it was time to peel potatoes, make salad bread, pork chops, snap green beans. After dinner, he cleaned the kitchen, folded more laundry, bathed the kids, and tucked them in. By 9 p.m., he collapsed into bed, completely drained. But wait. He was still expected to perform as a loving partner that night. Somehow he did. The next morning, he dropped to his knees and prayed again. "Lord, I was so wrong. I had no idea. Please, switch us back. I'll never complain again." God replied, "I think you've learned your lesson. I'll gladly return things to how they were. But you'll have to wait 9 months. You got pregnant last night." A couple was golfing on a very exclusive course, lined with million-dollar homes. On the third tee, the husband warned, "Honey, be careful with your drive. Don't hit any windows. It'll cost us a fortune." Sure enough, she teed up, and whack! The ball shanked straight into the largest house, smashing a window. The husband groaned, "I told you to watch the houses. Let's go apologize and see how much this'll cost." They walked up to the door and knocked. A voice inside called, "Come in." They stepped into the foyer, glass everywhere and a broken bottle on the floor. On the couch sat a man who smiled and said, "Are you the folks who broke my window?" Yeah. Really sorry about that." "No need to apologize," said the man. "You see, I'm a genie. That bottle you broke had me trapped for 1,000 years. You've freed me, so I'll grant 3 wishes. One for each of you, and one for me." The husband lit up. "All right, I want $1 million a year for the rest of my life." The genie nodded. "Done." The wife said, "I want a house in every country in the world." The genie smiled. "Also done." Then the husband asked, "And what's your wish?" "Well," the genie said, "after 1,000 years in a bottle, my wish is to sleep with your wife." The husband hesitated, then shrugged. "We did get the money and the houses." "Sure, go ahead." The genie took the wife upstairs and ravished her for 2 full hours. Afterwards, lying in bed, the genie looked over and asked, "So, how old is your husband anyway?" She replied, 35. The genie blinked and said, "And he still believes in genies? That's adorable." One dark night in Dublin, a fire broke out at the local chemical plant. Within minutes, it turned into a raging inferno. The alarm went out to fire departments across the region. When the first crews arrived, the chemical company president ran up to them and shouted, "Our secret formulas are locked in a vault in the center of the building. They must be saved. I'll give $50,000 to the fire crew who brings them out intact." But the flames were too intense. Firefighters couldn't get close. More departments arrived, and the president upped the offer. $100,000 to whoever saves those formulas. Still, nobody could break through the wall of fire. Suddenly, a lone siren screamed in the distance. A rusty old fire truck from a rural volunteer brigade came barreling over the hill. To everyone's shock, it didn't stop at the scene. It roared straight through the flames, right into the heart of the fire. Onlookers were stunned as the elderly crew, mostly over 65, leapt out, battled the blaze from the inside, and within minutes had extinguished the fire and rescued the secret vault. The crowd cheered. The company president rushed over and said, "That was incredible. For such courage, I'm raising the reward to $200,000. A local TV reporter shoved a mic in the fire chief's face and asked, "What are you going to do with all that money?" The 70-year-old fire chief wiped soot off his face and said, "Well, the first thing we're going to do is fix the bloody brakes on that fire truck." A senior couple went out for breakfast at a local diner. The sign read, "Senior Special, 2 eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. Just $2.99. "Sounds perfect," said the wife. "But I don't want the eggs," she added politely. The waiter raised an eyebrow. "Then it's $3.49 size without the eggs. That's ordering a la carte." The wife blinked. "You're telling me it costs more if I take less?" "Exactly," the waiter replied. She smiled sweetly. "Then I'll take the full special." "How would you like your eggs cooked?" he asked. "Uncooked, in the shell," she answered. She took them home and baked a chocolate cake for her grandkids. Lesson of the day? Don't mess with folks who've lived through payphones, paper maps, and gas under $1. We know how to stretch a deal. Larry's old shed went up in flames, and his wife, Betty, got right on the phone with their insurance company. She said, "We had that shed insured for $50,000, and I'd like to collect." The agent calmly responded, "Ma'am, that's not exactly how it works. First, we send someone out to inspect the damage. Then we calculate the value and replace it with something of equal worth." There was a pause on the line. Then Betty said, "All right. In that case, I'd like to cancel my husband's life insurance." An elderly couple was flying to Hawaii to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. Everything was going perfectly, until the captain came on the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have some serious news. All engines have failed. We're going to attempt an emergency landing on a small island below. We may survive, but there's a strong chance we'll never be found and could live on this island forever." With expert skill, the pilots managed to land the plane safely on a deserted beach. A while later, still sitting in the sand, the husband turns to his wife and nervously asks, "Did you pay the car loan this month?" "No, I forgot," she replies. "What about the credit card bill?" "Oh no, I meant to, but I didn't send it." "And the hospital bill from last month?" "I'm so sorry, I completely forgot that one too." Suddenly he grabs her, lifts her off the ground, and gives her the biggest hug in 50 years. She pulls back and asks, "Why are you so happy right now? We just crash-landed on a deserted island." He grins and says, "They'll find us. Trust me, someone will find us." The 6th grade science teacher, Mrs. Parks, asked her class, "Which human body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated?" No one answered until little Mary stood up and said, "You should not be asking 6th graders a question like that. I'm going to tell my parents, and they will go and tell the principal, who will then fire you." Mrs. Parks ignored her and asked the question again. "Which body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated?" Little Mary's mouth fell open. Then she said to those around her, "Boy, is she going to get in big trouble." The teacher continued to ignore her and said to the class, "Anybody?" Finally, Billy stood up, looked around nervously, and said, "The body part that increases 10 times its size when stimulated is the pupil of the eye." Mrs. Parks said, "Very good, Billy," then turned to Mary and continued, "As for you, young lady, I have 3 things to say. 1, you have a dirty mind. 2, you didn't read your homework. And 3, one day you are going to be very, very disappointed." A loud pounding on the door awakened a man and his wife at 3 a.m. The man got up and found a drunken stranger standing in the pouring rain, asking for a push. "Not a chance," said the husband. "It's 3 o'clock in the morning." He slammed the door and went back to bed. "Who was that?" asked his wife. "Just some drunk guy asking for a push," he replied. "Did you help him?" she asked. "No, it's 3 a.m. and pouring rain," he grumbled. "Well, you have a short memory," said his wife. "Don't you remember a few months ago when our car broke down and 2 strangers helped us? You should be ashamed. God loves drunk people too, you know." Feeling guilty, the man got dressed and went back out into the rain. He called into the darkness. "Hello, are you still there?" "Yes," came the reply. "Do you still need a push?" asked the husband. "Yes, please," replied the voice. "Where are you?" asked the man. "I'm over here, on the swing,"